Obviously, we're not there to achieve a defeat. And so we want some sort of a success. The words I have always used in addressing this issue and in any discussions in which I've been involved is we want a politically acceptable outcome. We want a politically acceptable outcome. That, to me, means it's something we can live with in terms of our national interest. It's something that is, in my judgment, attainable in the regional context. And it is something which specifically reduces the risks posed to us by Al-Qaeda.
Do you think that a full-blown counterinsurgency effort could actually work? Would you see a Western-style democracy flourish in Afghanistan?
Well, excuse me for laughing, but I mean the combination of the two I just find bizarre. And it's so ahistorical. A foreign operation tends to mobilize opposition. And the more intense and large-scale it is, the larger the opposition becomes. And therefore, when we talk about counterinsurgency, we have to feed into the equation how will the people in that country react at some point if we become the principal mechanism for the counterinsurgency. In other words, if Afghans are fighting the Taliban, counterinsurgency can succeed. If we are fighting the Taliban, the chances are that if we give 40,000 more troops for counterinsurgency against the existing levels of the Taliban, in a year from now, we may be fighting Taliban levels that are 25% higher. And then we have to send more troops in, etc., etc.
Could a further buildup in Afghanistan lead to this being Obama's Vietnam?
Well, if we pursue wrong policies, you can call it Obama's Vietnam, you can call it anything else, or it might be something quite new, but it will still be pretty bad. When we went into Afghanistan 8 years ago to overthrow the Taliban after 9/11, we did it largely with some Air Force, 300 Special Forces, and Afghans who were enthusiastically on our side because they viewed us as the people who helped them against the Soviets. We overthrew the Taliban quickly. Now, 8 years later, we have 60,000 American troops plus 40,000 NATO troops, and our military commanders are telling us that we're not winning. What does that tell you? Whence the resistance? Obviously, it's from the Taliban. But Afghans who increasingly somehow identify themselves with something that they were pleased to see being overthrown 8 years ago. That's a bad trend.
Does it look to you like a similar trend that the Soviet Union followed in Afghanistan?
Oh, I've been saying that exactly for the last 3 years. I've been saying the Soviets went into Afghanistan on the erroneous assumption that using communists, Afghan communists, from the big cities, they could create a communist society in Afghanistan. And they discovered within a year that they were viewed universally as enemies. Well, we are doing to some extent the same, basing ourselves on what we view as Western Afghans, democratic Afghans, or even imposing elections on them for which they're not prepared. And 8 years after our involvement, we're beginning to discover that it's rough going. So I think it's high time we draw some lessons from it. And those lessons should not involve the mechanical transfer to Afghanistan of our own experience, our own values, our own political system. I'm baffled, for example, why we proceeded with these elections, based more or less on the American model. You know, polling stations, candidates, debates, now perhaps even a runoff election. Why not a jirga, which is the traditional way the Afghans elect their leaders? Why impose this mechanism?